What's up, guys? Dan1098. Are you ready for a complex thought? So, as of recently, people are talking about alternative timelines, and you know, people think that the Earth has been populated for a lot longer than what history has given it credit. And things like go Babel I can't say it. The place in Turkey, with the monoliths and the different animals on it, and a whole series, Younger Dryas period. A lot of people are talking about that. Joe Rogan's talked about it with a couple guys, that they do indeed think civilization has been around a lot longer than what it has, and something, the flat Earth thing, the conspiracy is with that too, that we are on some sort of firmament. And I think linking ancient civilizations and linking it to, um, you know, things that you can track and things that has happened with the Younger Dryas discussion, where something happened, a meteor hit or something, and it flooded and it melted a lot of meltwater, and that's what everybody talks about, the flood, the biblical accounts, the different accounts throughout history, that may indeed the flood happened at the Younger Dryas period. So something strikes me, which is a theory that I would like to throw out there to everybody, and I'm going to try to explain it, as quick as I can. And it's a theory that links the Bible, which is one of the oldest texts, right when everybody was writing and scribing, and even the first book ever printed was off of a printing press. There's a huge history on that. Not getting into all that, but it is an important history book. You may or may not agree with it, but the fact that it's been around for as long as it has, and how many copies and has been made, the different translations. You can take it back to Syriac accounts, in Aramaic, but people are saying the flood happened that, and it did happen, and people have been on the earth, or people have been here for a long amount of time, a lot longer than what history says it. And the theory that I want to say, and try to get out there and try to explain, is I think you can link another thing in the Bible of something that happened on the human timeline. I honestly think a Babel type event happened. So if you look at history, it's important to know the timeline or written accounts of just what has happened. So real quick, briefly, people think, scientists, secular or non-secular scientists, think that humans have been here 250,000 years. Well, let's just say it has, for the sake of argument, whether you're old Earth or young Earth. So if it indeed is that old, you should have certain things like, if you look at our written history timeline, every single one of them only go back like 10,000 years, 12, 15,000 years. But if you stretch it all the way out to 30, 3,200, where everybody says, the vast majority, I mean 99% of that or more, is condensed in the past 14, 15,000 years, on back up to where they think husbandry happened. So if you look at the entire timeline, at vast majority of it, if they say it was there, is not recorded and not written. But you can look at artifacts that date back a long time. Go Babel that place I can't pronounce, 12,000 years. But what everybody can agree with, the scientists for the most part, is two things you can track: is agriculture that popped up on the map, sometime, like 12,000 to 10,000 BC, so 14, 15,000 years ago. It's on the timeline, people argue. And also husbandry, animals, keeping cows, keeping chickens, using horses. Um, Scientists have found, evidence of that around the same time period, 2,000 years after, and 10,000 to 12,000 BC, 14,000 years ago. And go Beble dates back to that, right? And I'm not trying to use the Turkish fine in this argument, but I think it does carry weight. But so if we all can agree, that humans have been here and have been working with animals, there's evidence of trading. There's different things they're finding that only exist thousands of miles away. People are finding proof of trade. Well, if you take that whole timeline where we've been here, reduce it down to the past 10,000 years, they say all civilizations started around the same time. The Mesopotamians, the cradle, the Egyptians, North African, on over into Asia with ancient China, the Maya, the very old Native American, North and South American tribes, they all sort of not came at the same time, but pretty close on the scale of things if you look at it. So with it all being on that scale, something that struck me that blew my mind is if you look at the Egyptians, if you look at the Sumerians, if you look at the what seemed to be established cultures, they all pop up at the same time. And of course, civilizations have, requirements, and written text is one of those things, right? And if you look at all these different civilizations, for the most part, everybody started writing at the same exact time. And if you look at the timeline, that they say people were cavemen, right? That we had a stick and we killed things and gathered things. That's true, but we were no smarter, say 320,000 years ago than we are now. And if you take into account agriculture and husbandry, to do agriculture and plow farms, you have to do primitive math of some sort. Even if you're trying to irrigate a field, right? You have to have some sort of primitive math if it's nothing more than a string, right? And the string, you use it to measure things, or you're building this, or you do this. But if you play with the string for long enough, you realize that lengths and everything is on the, lengths is tied to pi, which is geometry, which is the language, of the earth and frequencies, right? So I think to say humans, we've had the same heart this entire time. If I was 15,000 years ago and I was working with animals and I was growing things, if I had a friend back then, I would want to talk to that person, and not only talk to that person, but say Carl down the street and Jim Bob. If I had a few more goats that I wanted to trade for some chickens, or I wanted to trade for some seashells, from Asia, I would most definitely write down what they owed me. And I don't think there's any part in human existence that humans don't seek out writing. A child loves to color. I don't think it's because they're developing. I think humans have an inherent right to write things down. Look at Twitter. Look at what social media has done. Advent of electricity, rediscovery of electricity. Maybe we're using electricity the wrong way. But what I'm saying is I don't think for those 7,000 some odd years, from 14,000 BC to 3,000 BC, we were all cavemen and we didn't have bronze. I mean, you're telling me in the course of 300,000 years of existence on humans, all of a sudden at one point we were like, hey, we have bronze. Hey, we live in a house. I sell chickens that I raise. Oh, Peter down the road, he's really good at making things. You can't tell me, and this is my main argument about Babel, is in this timeline for this many years, people didn't talk to each other. So tying it all back, knowing the timeline is important. And after reading history, what's really important, there's arguments on the Egyptian list of pharaohs. There's arguments of whatever before 3200 BC, but everywhere in culture started writing at the same time. And I don't think it's just evolution. I honestly don't. It's not that we didn't write before. It's not that we didn't keep records before. You know, it's that we did do that. We did do those things. You can't tell me that we didn't as humans. We traveled. There's remains of humans found all over the earth. We're definitely, it was a populated planet. And people talked, people wrote things down, people traveled, not the distances we can now, but look at the civilization and the migration, you know, over the planet. I mean, we spread out across the Pacific, everywhere, you know, at different times, but everyone can agree for the most part on written history. But all of a sudden, you know, at this one point, 3200 BC, we all started writing. We all had a knowledge of the stars. We all used bow and arrows. We all rode the horse, knew how to ride the horse for the most part, right? Horses originally came from North America, and so did camels. And then they died out, right? Different time. You can argue this point, but with Babel, it's important to understand the history of Babel, right? So with the history of Babel, it happened. It happened before the flood. I mean, after the flood. I'm sorry. It happened after the flood. Let me double check this. So the Jews keep up with it. Tasha, can I use your phone? She's using her phone. All right. So if my memory serves me correct, right, which it does, the earth in the Jews, the way the Jews count it, they've been counting it for a long time. Say it's around 5,000 years old, right? And the flood happened 2,400 years after creation. And this throws the biblical timeline. And I'm a devout Christian, and this is, you know, an abstract idea, and I'm not doubting God, I'm not doubting the Jews, right? But what I'm saying is Babel honestly happened. Historically, it happened. So the story of Babel happened like this, right? Like God had the people, and he made the people and put them out. And then everybody, through their own glorification and through their own self-worship, decided to try to build something in the glory of themselves. And in the story of Bible, that they were building a tower. It may or may not went to heaven, but they were building a tower, and God didn't want them to do that. And everybody, a populated earth before Babel, it says it clearly in the Bible, and if you take it as a history book, that's fine. It's been around for a long time, you know, but what I'm saying is that the earth was populated for a long time, and the Bible says that too. Non-secular thinking thinks that, and the Bible says they've been around for a long time too. The big disconnect is the timeline, and people are arguing about when it happened, not if it happened, but when. Like, people could keep up with time as good as they could, and in written history could move forward. But my argument, right, is when Babel happened, God did not want them to continue to work together, right? And everybody spoke the same language. So God made everyone speak in different languages and confused them, and that's why it's called the Great Babel. So if we think of Babel in that sense, just working, everything's going great, everyone's speaking the same language, a proto-language, if you will. And then all of a sudden, a God event happened that put everyone in a situation where they could not talk to each other. After cities were made, after all of this, right, that they could not put them together, right, and they could not speak to each other. There was war that ensued. Tribalization of the people that happened, right? Tribalization happened. So what I'm saying is if that happened when they say it happened, right, which is like 3,000 or something, less than 3,000 years ago, there's written history that does not have this account in these times. I mean, honestly, written history does never account everyone not speaking this, everyone all of a sudden speaking a different language, right? I mean, history doesn't say that. And if you use the Jews timeline with written history does not line up. I mean, and I think long years ago, it was hard to keep up with records, and verbal traditions got handed down, and records may have got changed for the sake. There's people that think this for the sake of just ease, right? I mean, even non secular people believe all the time that the Bible, right, the years count on each other for an ease of doing it. So don't think of it like the timeline. Think about if it happened. So if a Babel happened, right? Um, and imagine me and you just chilling, and all of a sudden we could not talk to each other, right? All of a sudden we could not talk to each other. What would you do to try to communicate with me? If I was thirsty, I would do this, right? Or if I was trying to run, I would do this. Or maybe I would draw something. The very first hieroglyphics ever found in Egypt are on little pieces. You can look this up on Google. They're on little pieces of things that look exactly like a flashcard. One of the very first agreed upon on the Egyptian timeline hieroglyphs, right, is called the billboard. It's on the side of a mountain. At the same time, nearly, you see massive tribalizations of all nations, North and South Egypt split up. All at this time, I mean, you see so much war. No one warred before. I mean, people were working together and build things, and then all of a sudden, everybody splits up. So with hieroglyphics, and if I couldn't talk, all of a sudden, what I would do is start writing pictures of things or pressing things into tablets. And if the proof with the Babel is not that we lost language, it's that the human people, honestly, they had to talk to each other. You look at the re-emergence of language, not was it taken away. When did language re-emerge? And the written record shows a re-emergence of language on a populated earth and a timeline, a re-emergence of language at 3200 BC, all across the world pretty much, with, all across the world. It happened at the same time. Babel triggered sudden loss of language. People were working together. People were doing things. People were trading. People were talking. People had art. A Babel type event where a population lost language happened. And I think it happened around 3200 BC. And I think the Jews may just got the numbers wrong. I mean, I've had debates about this with people that are involved in church and actually, have ministries and have YouTube channels and stuff like this. And secular people want to defend so much, not if it happened, but when it happened, that people can't see this. So if you've hung on this long, I appreciate it. Like, flat earth is not real. I get that. I think we have a firmament. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know. Can we argue about that one? But the one I want to put out there is a Babel type event happened where sudden loss was triggered. A populated earth lost the ability to communicate and had to restart over. A cataclysm, I mean, it could have been. I mean, I don't know. But to say for hundreds of thousand years, to say that humans have been here and didn't speak and we didn't write things down, I think that's just, it's garbage. And Babel happened, guys. I mean, it says it in the Bible. You don't read it anywhere else because everybody couldn't talk to each other. And at the point that written history takes over, it's agreed upon. Graham thinks this. So many people think that, I mean, a populated earth. I mean, so many people honestly, think that we have ancient civilizations beyond a written history, and I think so too. And I think that Babel happened. I mean, I honestly do, and it happened, 31 to 3200 BC. America was settled. Mesopotamia, was settled. They say people got there, 13,000 years ago. Mesoamerica, the Nile Valley, 8,000 years ago, they say. Mesoamerica, I mean, they say people were there. But they weren't cavemen, I don't think. Very primitive, sure. Without language, without written history, no. I don't think so. Something took it out, and I think it was a Babel type event. Was it from God? I think so. Was it from a meteor or something? Maybe. But we wasn't cavemen for this long, and all of a sudden made spears and rode horses. Um, Education has brainwashed us. Question everything.